What's up, everyone? Today I want to talk about the El Clasico teams, which are FC Barcelona and Real Madrid. Both teams have a very interesting way of going into the season. Barcelona, they're coming off winning La Liga for the second year in a row, made some big signings. A lot of their players just came off a World Cup win. Hansi Flick looks very refreshed. His team's no one got hurt, knock on wood, from his World Cup. He was able to bring guys like Rodri. He was able to bring a guy like Andy Gordon, spend big money on him. Got rid of some players he needed, and the team's looking very refreshed. They kick off their season this weekend. Very excited to see how they do. I just want to talk about these two teams' years in general, and just what are my expectations for them. So I'm starting with Barcelona. They kick off this weekend against Elche, I believe, at Elche. Elche, they kicked off last weekend. They looked pretty good, but I just think Barcelona would be a better team. They should take 3 points, but for me, Barcelona, they're going to have an interesting couple of weeks because the transfer window is winding down, and they still don't have a true striker. As we know, Lewandowski's gone. They brought in Anthony Gordon. Anthony Gordon's not a striker, but he plays on the same side as Rafinha, and Rafinha is obviously a great player, so that causes a little bit of interesting. Gordon, for me, is just not tall enough, not much of a true finisher for him to be your striker. So I feel like they have to get that figured out soon rather than later. We know the whole Julian Alvarez saga. Alvarez wants to go there. They want him. They're willing to pay all this money, but Atletico are being stubborn. They're telling him you're not going nowhere. They're saying it's not a hostage situation, but it really is a hostage situation. I kind of feel bad for the kid. For Atletico, I feel like if it's 150 million coming your way for Julian Alvarez, why not kick him out? I get it's to a rival, the whole thing with Griezmann in the past, but the kid wants to leave, and I feel like you can't stop that. So Barcelona definitely have to figure out their striker situation soon. I just think Rodri coming in is just a massive upgrade. You're getting the best DM in the world. You're getting one of the best center mids, in the world in general, and slotting him next to guys like De Jong, Pedri when healthy, him playing behind Fermin, it helps the defense with Kubarsi, especially in a team that plays such a high line, it gets called out all the time, as we've seen in like a couple of these big games in Champions League and even La Liga. I just think Rodri being there to slow down the pace, pass the ball around, and when the high line gets caught out for a second, he can get back there, and he scores big time goals too. So for me, Barcelona, maybe I'll make my prediction after them, but they're obviously a top 2 team in La Liga. Them and Barca are going to be battling out all year. Champions League is going to be interesting though. I think this should be their main goal. If you're always going to be up there in La Liga, you really have to take care of business in like 5 games. Just got to beat Atletico twice, who kind of had your number. You have to take a couple points off Real Madrid. Then there's always a team La Liga here and there that gonna give you some trouble, take some points off you. But as long as they win the lower tier games, they'll probably go 3 in a row. So obviously it's an exciting time for Barcelona, as I do think this is the strongest squad, they've had in such a long time. They have great depth. They're bringing in big time signings. A lot of these players are playing with one another, and in my opinion, you have the best winger in the world in Lamine Yamal. The kid's 19, 20 years old, and he's putting in, putting out every week. Rafinha, after coming off a bad season, still going to be out there. Fermin Lopez, great player, great in the attacking midfield. He is a superstar. I don't care what people said. If he was at the World Cup, I think Spain would have had every game in the bag by like the 45th minute. I'm being dead serious. This kid is very special. All they're missing right now is just a striker. They get that figured out. I'm not sitting here saying Anthony Gordon's not worth it, but Anthony Gordon for me is just not a striker. You need someone who's very lethal up front, can just make the runs in behind, and especially for a team like this, any of these guys could score. So it's a very exciting team. Now let's talk about Real Madrid. This one's going to be fun. I'm so happy Jose Mourinho is back at Real Madrid. I think this team needs someone like him, especially after last year with Arbeloa and then forcing out Xabi Alonso super early. Very glad they got Vinicius back. They obviously brought in guys like Diamande. They're trying to strengthen the defense with guys like Kanate. Trent's going to be out there. They brought in Dumfries, Cucurella, Bernardo Silva. They did the whole rehaul for Real Madrid. They kept some of their guys, too, for great depth. They're a team with great depth. Obviously, you have youngsters like Bellingham. Bellingham will be playing, obviously. I meant to say Goulet, like Artur Goulet, Endrick coming off the bench. Those guys didn't leave. The team is just stacked top to bottom. And I think Jose Mourinho being there is great. I feel like they do have a couple of egos in this team, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but this team needs someone to really hone it into them and give them a killer mentality. They have the best player in the world in Kylian Mbappe. They have one of the best wingers in the world in Vinicius Jr. These two will always link up. These guys will score goals in big moments. And I just think, with the style Mourinho plays, it's going to benefit them a lot. Defensively, they're going to be really good again. I think them getting Konate, I've seen Konate a lot. There's times he's a clumsy defender, but I think on the sides when you have guys like Dumfries and Cucurella who can defend, fly forward, fly back, and you're bringing guys like Trent off the bench, or unless Trent were to play next to Dumfries, these guys just have talent everywhere. It's gonna be a really, really hard team to beat. And they're coming off a season where back-to-back seasons, excuse me, where they haven't gotten a trophy, which is crazy for Real Madrid standards. So their main goal, honestly, in my opinion, should be the La Liga. I know it sounds crazy, Real Madrid. They always win the Champions League and the Champions League, but I feel like you guys see one go through the hoop. For me, the Champions League, there's a lot of good teams in there this year. They're probably one of the top 5 teams, on paper at least. We haven't seen them play under Mourinho yet, but when you look at it, it's an insane super squad. La Liga is definitely very winnable. Even the Copa del Rey they should take. Any trophy at this rate for Real Madrid, you just got to see one go through the hoop. Mourinho always wins wherever he goes, unless you're Tottenham. So I just think having Mourinho there is going to be very good for them. They put up more fights in games like El Clasico, and especially last year in the Champions League, they were getting thrown around by Bayern. I know that game was so high scoring, but Bayern kept having their number. Bayern was just making so many mistakes. So Real Madrid, Barcelona, they're just two interesting teams. This league it's gonna be one of them too. If I were to bet it, if I were to say who I think wins, I think it's gonna be Real Madrid's here. I think Barcelona would play too risky. I know a lot of these players just played them on another World Cup, but it's a different system Hansi Flick likes to play. They play too far up. At times they do get caught out. And, I just think Mourinho and these players are very hungry for a trophy, especially to win a trophy at Real Madrid. It means a lot to these guys. So it's going to be a fun La Liga battle, week in, week out. I feel like we're going to have to be watching when El Clasico comes around. It's going to be fantastic. Both these teams definitely be in it for the Champions League. I really don't think any of them will win it, though. I think Barcelona have the better chance at that. I know I just said La Liga will go Real Madrid, but anything can happen in 90 in the Champions League. So definitely exciting if you're a Barcelona or Real Madrid fan. If the season's coming up for you, I love watching these two teams week in, week out. It's just the best players in the world on the best teams, and you just get to see them fight. So let me know what you guys think down below. What you think these teams are going to be. I think Real Madrid will probably get their leg back and win La Liga. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Have a good one. I'll catch you all later.